So today I went to see 28 Years Later. This is the latest film in the 28 series of movies. We have 28 Days Later, 28 Weeks Later. This is 28 Years Later. This is directed by Danny Boyle. It stars Jodie Comer, Alfie Williams, Aaron Taylor Johnson, Ralph Fiennes, and others. So this movie was a lot different than I thought it was going to be, actually. I thought this was going to be the most polished of the three movies, and that actually turned out not to be the case. I'll explain a little bit. So for those of you who don't know, 28 Days Later, the one that kicked off this now trilogy, was filmed in a digital format that basically has locked it into 480p, and it's not able to be really restored in any meaningful way. So it looks pretty low budget, it looks pretty indie, it looks pretty rough, although some of the shot composition and some of the filming techniques are extraordinary. It just looks low budget. 28 Weeks Later, which was the second film in this now trilogy, was not directed by Danny Boyle, and I don't think it was written by Alex Garland either. Very different vibe. It was kind of just a standard zombie action movie. It didn't really stand out that much. It was something on par with like I Am Legend, maybe a bit elevated above that, but kind of on that level. So I guess I was expecting this one, 28 Years Later, to be different. The best way I can describe this is I thought it was going to be less indie and a little more, I guess what I would describe as like sure-footed. But I think what I'm learning is that maybe 28 Days Later had kind of an indie experimental feel to it, not because it was necessarily indie and experimental, but because that's Danny Boyle's style. Because this one, I feel like, harkened back to 28 Days Later much more than I was expecting it to. I was kind of expecting 28 Years Later to be a good mixture of 28 Days Later and 28 Weeks Later. Kind of the more put together movie feel of 28 Weeks Later with the directing style of 28 Days Later. But it was just much different than that. The filming, the editing, the scoring, and even just the tonal shifts in the movie felt very off-kilter and strange to me. Not that it was bad, but it was just much different than I was expecting. So I'll give a little plot synopsis, and then we'll kind of go into some of the things that I just thought were interesting about the film. So basically, I would say, first third of this film is us following Jamie, played by Aaron Taylor Johnson, and Spike, played by Alfie Williams. They're a father and a son, and they're going on this basically coming of age journey for Spike. Jamie is taking him out beyond the gates of their walled compound into the land where zombies run free. And he's going to have him kill a zombie or two, have kind of this manhood moment, and then he's going to bring him back. So that's kind of the first third of the movie. And then I would say the last 2/3 of the movie is Spike taking his mother back out into the wilderness because she's ill, and no one knows exactly what's wrong with her. And in his little excursion with his father, he found out that there's like one remaining doctor out in the wilderness who could potentially help his mother. So against the wishes of his father and the rest of his community, he takes his mother back out into the wilderness to find this doctor and see if he can help his mother's illness. So there's kind of a two-part journey in this movie. Once where Spike goes out with his father, once where Spike goes out with his mother. And it's kind of Spike's journey of becoming an adult, finding his courage, and understanding the meaning of life and death, if you want to get philosophical. There was this juxtaposition that I thought was really interesting, looking at kind of the first part of the movie and the second part of the movie. So in the first part of the movie, as I said, Spike goes on this coming-of-age journey with his father. And there's this sense I got in their interaction, in their journey, and in their coming home from this adventure, that the making of a man or a legend has a little bit to do with falsehood and lying to yourself, lying to others. When they come home, Spike's father is kind of twisting the truth a little bit, making Spike seem a little bit more courageous, a little bit more legendary than he actually was, and this kind of bothers Spike. And there's also this sense in which they're lying to themselves about the reality that we all are going to die, about the reality that death is imminent for us all. There's the sense that if you're a hero or a courageous warrior, you almost have to push that reality out of your head. I thought this was interesting because this is kind of put in juxtaposition with the last part of the movie, in which Spike goes out with his mother. And in this part of the film, it's very much about him being courageous, not just presenting himself to others as courageous, but actually being courageous and confronting death. There's a big section of the movie in which memento mori becomes a big part of kind of what's going on. And it's presented as actually a beautiful thing, that you are realizing that you are going to die one day, and you're realizing that there can be love, there can be acceptance in that. And so I thought that was just a really interesting theme that ran throughout the movie. So what are some things that really made this movie unique? Well, one is the filming of it. So one of the big conversations around this movie was that it was filmed on iPhones, and that's partially true. I think iPhones were used as well as other cinema cameras and stuff like that. And I think the iPhones probably had some fancy, rigging with lenses and whatnot. But be that as it may, it was filmed partially on iPhone. And you can really tell that in some of the shots. There's like a bullet time effect shot where a zombie gets hit with an arrow, and it gets hit and then it kind of freeze frames, and then it does the bullet time effect and kind of changes perspective. It's cool. It was a little weird the way it was edited, but it was kind of cool. In my opinion, and I want to be careful about saying this because I don't know, this could have just been my theater that I was watching this in. But in my opinion, it looked kind of like it was filmed on a phone. It really was not that sharp. It always seemed like everything was just a little bit out of focus. It was a little bit fuzzy. And that bothered me. I didn't really like that look. I don't understand why that's an aesthetic, if that's what they're going for. Kind of like the people who said that it was on purpose that 28 Days Later was filmed the way it was. I was just like, man, that was a horrible idea. It just looks bad, in my opinion. And this movie looked a lot better than 28 Days Later, but it still looked a little weird. It still looked a little off. And I think it just, in my opinion, it took away from the cool visuals that were going on in the movie. Like there's this whole sequence in the middle of the night with kind of like the aurora borealis or whatever, and the stars, and it looks like dreamlike. And I was like, that would have looked so cool if it didn't look so fuzzy. If it would have been in focus, it just like would have looked a lot cooler. Another thing was the editing. There was, like I said, some almost kind of stuttery, jumpy editing that was interesting. I don't know that I really liked that either. It really felt strange. I think it worked in some places. In other places, it just felt like like you were watching a DVD that was skipping. The scoring, I would say, is similar to 28 Days Later in that it's a very unique score. There's music that you feel like maybe shouldn't really go with the situation that you're in, but it kind of works weirdly. Like there's some very intense sequences in which you feel like the music should be like really intense and kind of dark, but it's strangely ethereal and calm and pleasing, and it just offers like a really interesting view into what's going on and maybe what's trying to be said. So the scoring I didn't mind so much. It's definitely different than a lot of movies, but it was good. I enjoyed that. And then some of the tonal shifts, like I said, there's moments where you feel like it should be a much sadder, darker tone, but it's actually being presented as kind of a beautiful, serene thing. And that was interesting. I didn't mind that. Like, I think that's artistic, and I didn't have a problem with that. It was just interesting and something that I took note of. So in looking back at the three movies now that are in this trilogy, this one, 28 Years Later, I would say is my second favorite behind 28 Days Later. It definitely has the style and just kind of the unexpected vibe of Danny Boyle, and I appreciate that. I don't always like the choices he makes, but I think it's definitely interesting to watch. It's an engaging watch. It makes you think. And so I think I would rate this film probably a 3.5 out of 5. I enjoyed my time in the theater. If you've seen the other two films in this trilogy and you liked them to some extent, I would definitely recommend seeing this one. I think it's worth your time. So thanks for being here with me, and I hope you have a good one. Bye.
7, 6, 11, 5, 9 and 20 miles today, 4, 11, 17, 32 the day before. Boot, 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 moving up and down again. There's no discharge in the war.